Nature Valley Granola, a $100,000 wedding, and Sunday morning services. They all have something in common. They are all containers. Now, what happens when the containers we have don't hold what we expect inside? In today's episode, we'll talk about the labels of our containers and how they might be misleading our expectations. Remember, y'all, connection doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. Let's get it. All right. Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Connection by Design. Y'all, we are doing this thing, an episode a week, every week, at least for the first 10 episodes. My goodness. I am your host, Kristen KB Newton. Thank you so much for being here. We've got my show producer, Des, in the background. Say what's up, Des.
Hey, y'all.
So today we are going to be talking about containers. Now, I think if this is your first episode, you might not know, but I was actually a professional DJ for like a decade and a half. DJ for the NBA, the WNBA, did festivals, was in a band, traveled, toured, did all the things. The creative, okay? And one of the things that I loved as a DJ was doing weddings. Now, most DJs will tell you like being a wedding DJ is a whole nother like art and skill. And I would agree. However, I enjoyed the challenge of this being the most important day. The pressure is on, and these two families might not even like each other, but I have one job and one job only, and that is to get everybody on the floor in a line dance at some point. Like, it just felt like the ultimate like challenge. No, but for real, weddings were one of my favorite things to do. And the reason why weddings were one of my favorite things to do is because there was so much to curate. Now, I'll zoom out from the wedding thing real quick and just tell you this quick story. I am married to an individual who does not like to throw containers away. So much so that the other day I was getting ready to go to work and there was a Nature Valley granola box on our counter, the big one, like from Costco. And when I went to the box, I went to go reach into the box and there were no bars inside of the box. And I don't know what this is, but baby, Mike does not like to throw away boxes. I mean, at all. So I'm sitting here thinking, oh, there's a box on the counter. Surely there are granola bars in that box, but they were not in the box. And it made me think about this episode. It made me think about kind of what we're going to talk about today. And that is sometimes the containers that we expect to hold certain things don't actually have what we're expecting inside. Now, back to the weddings. People assume that by default, having a wedding equals nostalgia, equals belonging, safety, love in the air, all the things. And I just told this story on my social media the other day that there was a woman who did a $100,000 wedding, big budget, beautiful photos. Decor was, I mean, like you felt like you were walking into like a magical world. The food was really great. The dancing obviously was amazing. But when she was debriefing the wedding with her wedding planner, she said it felt like no one was connected. Now that no event planner, no wedding planner wants to hear that, but I think it was a tell. The way she described it was that her college friends were in the corner the whole time. She felt like her family wasn't interacting with his family and that she was like hosting 5 different events in one event. And that's unfortunate, right? One, you paid a whole lot of money for all of these things, but also she paid a whole lot of money for this wedding. So I think by default, she thought the more money I spend, the more likely it is that people will feel connected. The Pinterest board told me that people will feel connected, right? If I have these kinds of flowers or these color combinations or whatever. And I think that we believe that about a lot of other containers too, not just weddings. There are countless pastors that I've talked to that will tell me, you know, KB, people will come to church on Sunday. They will literally stand next to one another, cry and sing about love and connection and not actually be doing that with one another in the service or outside the service, whether it be church or a wedding or a family reunion or a team meeting or a retreat. These containers that we have, they don't by default come with connection inside. It's not like going to the store, buying a can of soup, taking the soup home, opening up that can and seeing soup on the inside. Like that, it just doesn't work like that. You have to actually curate connection. You cannot rely on the container by default to have it. And once you recognize this, it really does help you to think through your relationships, the connections that you have with other people. It also explains sometimes why you feel frustrated or disappointed by certain individuals, because maybe the label on the container of that relationship doesn't actually match the behavior that's coming out of it, or doesn't actually match the expectations that you have of it. And this is what we're going to talk about today on the board: how the labels that we put on different levels of connection by default do not contain the exchange of currency on those levels. So let's look at the board. Okay. Welcome back to the board. If you are new here, this is the segment of the podcast where I can try to take what we've talked about that day and put it on my digital whiteboard and really kind of give visual to the framework, which again is one big funnel, and hopefully help the content seep in a little more. So 5 levels of connection. At the top, it's wider. At the bottom, it's more narrow. And the levels are that of a stranger on level 1, acquaintance on level 2, ally on level 3, confidant on level 4, and inner circle on level 5, okay? Now, everybody starts at the top and everybody won't make it through the bottom, but the point of the 5 levels of connection is just to identify, again, where people are in the level of connection. Now, as we've been talking about containers and what should be in those containers, I want you today to now think about level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5 as their own containers. Okay. Now here are some examples. We have 10 examples on the board between the titles that we might give our personal relationships or maybe events that we might attend and how they could possibly align with one of these levels of connection. All right. If we start at the top, a title that you might give someone on level 1 is that of a stranger. Why? Because you have no information about them. But what does that look like in the context of an event? That might be a concert or a coffee shop. You'll walk into a coffee shop, you don't know anybody at the coffee shop. You walk into a concert, I don't know anybody at this concert. And the expectations that we have of one another are aligned with the level of connection that we have, and that is we are strangers, okay? Now let's skip down to maybe level 3 and see what it looks like on level 3. On level 3, you have your allies. The currency that we're exchanging on level 3 is a return on investment. This is mutually beneficial for the both of us. So maybe a title for a relationship you have might be your gym bro. This is somebody that you go to the gym with. Y'all, spot each other, you encourage each other, you push each other, right? You meet every single week. This person is an ally to you, right? And it might align perfectly with the currency that is exchanged on level 3. Now, what kind of event would you go to where maybe level 3 is expected? I said church. Church might be a space that you go. It's like, hey, we want people to be benefiting mutually by other people being in this space. That is what we want at church. Now, let's look at the illustration that I gave earlier in the episode with the wedding. You have this bride who spends all this money on this experience, the food, the photos, the DJ, all this stuff, and she invites her inner circle to this wedding. And naturally, the people who are there are probably family. It might be her best friends. Like, again, it's her lover, the person that she wants to be with for the rest of her life. But she walks away from that wedding saying, it just felt like people weren't connecting. Why is that the case? Well, for the inner circle that was there, they probably had a great time celebrating the union. But the truth of the matter is, the families were probably strangers with one another, at best acquainted with one another. And so it might have felt like that in the room because the connection that the people had in the room with one another wasn't actually the same connection that she had with the people in the room. And the reason why this is valuable to have this framework and to be able to kind of talk through these examples is so that you can see where sometimes the containers that we have for people or for experiences don't always align with what we're actually feeling or experiencing in the relationship. And this is why. And when you can actually map it and say, oh, I see exactly why that went really, really well or isn't going really, really well, it helps us to have clarity and have language for how we do life with those individuals. The last thing I'll just talk about, which I'll just use the pen to move this example, is the best friend, right? There are a lot of people who have the title of best friend, but they only have that title because of the length of time they've known the individual. I don't know if you know people like that, like, oh, that's my best friend because we've known each other since we were 3, right? Okay, great. Well, maybe your best friend is someone that you've known since you were 3, but the actual title doesn't actually match the container that your relationship actually is. And that is, your best friend is really a level 2 to you because they don't really know who you are in this season of your life. They don't know what you value. They don't really know what you're going through. You're not vulnerable with them. You're not transparent with them. You just refer to them as your best friend in title, but the actual container that is holding the relationship is that of level 2. So the expectations are on level 2, and that's what it is. If that's the case in your own life and your relationships, where you have some relationships that have certain titles that might not by default match the assumed container, just make sure that everybody's on the same page about the container, and that is what I would say is the most important. All right, I hope that all of this was helpful. Let's get into segment 3.
I just told my people 2 minutes ago, I didn't know they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I could send a military plane or something, but if you would like to, it's the coolest night, it's the biggest speech. In the White House the next day, we'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. Absolutely. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay? But anyway, if you could work that out, I would be honored to have you all lectured.
All right. Okay, so that clip goes viral, and people have a problem with the comment that he makes about, we have to invite the women's team. There's kind of the laughter. He said, if I don't, I'll be impeached. And here's the thing about labels, right? Donald Trump holds a label. He is our president. He is the president of the United States of America. With that label comes an expectation of what should be inside of that container. And I think people are disappointed because you just don't expect your president to engage in locker room talk, or, if that's what people want to call it, or, belittling the efforts of women or the accomplishments of women or degrading women in any way. And just kind of what we have seen come out of him in this term and the last one. I think there's just a misalignment of what you expect to be in this container and to come from this container. And so people are usually taken aback. But I think also there's disappointment in the men's team, right? If it's like, hey, the women's team are kind of being pacified or, pandering this, oh, we'll bring them just because we have to kind of thing. Like you would expect for the U.S. men's hockey team to also have a level of like dignity and pride about the women's team, who also has achieved, incredible things. And so there's probably disappointment there because like we expected that container to possess something else inside of it. And I don't know how many times we just see this happening, that someone who is in a position of authority or power or as a celebrity or whatever, like we just have written this story about what should be in that container. And sometimes we have these misconceptions. Like we write stories with information we don't have about those individuals, and we just assume the title will equal integrity. The title will equal kindness. The title will equal, fairness or justice or consideration or selflessness or whatever. And it's just not the case. And so the new thought process, I believe, that we have to have as we're thinking about people in our lives with titles, particularly ones we don't have personal relationships with, but that we watch from a distance, put more weight in their behavior and the things that they're actually putting on display than what you assume could or should be true based on the title that they hold.
Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sounds like let these behaviors be the information that you are collecting for these people, not the title.
Correct.
And that is sufficient enough to assume information that you actually have not received yet.
For sure. For sure.
Talk about relationship containers like husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah. Just because you have the title of a husband or a title of a wife doesn't mean you are committed. Doesn't mean you are sacrificial or selfless. Just because you have the title of boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't mean you are faithful, right? Just because a person has the title of a leader or a manager or a supervisor doesn't actually mean they do their jobs well. Like, we've seen that, especially in the workplace, right? Where somebody's promoted to a position and given a specific title for whatever the reason might be, but they're not actually the most qualified individual for the role. And that's frustrating because what comes with the title is a certain expectation of, regard or respect or whatever. But it's like, but your behavior, my God, does not align with this title. So this makes me think about, like, in the workplace, the Peter principle, where people are promoted to their level of incompetency. So you go into an organization, if you're in that organization and you are ascending, and again, my husband was just telling me about this the other day. He goes, if people are ascending within the organization, they are likely to be promoted if they're doing a great job until they are promoted to a position where they are not competent. And then they stay at that level. And in those spaces, people are being rewarded for like past behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like we see that in a lot of different places. But what inevitably that means is that people then attain a title and hold a specific container that they can't actually like fill, right? And now everybody's affected by that. And the culture of the organization is impacted by that because there's a label on this container that doesn't actually have the substance in it that the label would imply or assume. Listen, gender roles, containers. You get what I mean? Like, you have an expectation of how this woman will act or behave or what she will be like in this role of a wife. And if cooking is a part of that, you should make sure she has that information before y'all, make any deeper commitments, because the containers that I saw, my daddy cooked and he threw down and he was a firefighter, and firefighters are the best cooks in the world, I think. Like, baby, when they're not saving your life, they in that kitchen, okay? And so I just feel like if we do not take the time to understand that containers do not by default come with anything, they have to be filled. They are meant to hold things. And although we label containers, it doesn't mean that what you think the label implies is actually in the container. So we just have to do that work. All right, containers, titles, all the things. Here's the thing. I'm not going to argue for you to keep the title or lose the title. Just know that I don't care what you call any of the people in your life, any of the containers or spaces in your life. To me, the title brings clarity and understanding only if both people have the same understanding about the words that we're using. It is more important that you figure out the expectations associated with those titles and the behavior or the moments or the culture that those titles hold, and get clear on all of those things, and then have fun labeling all of the things. Because if you don't do that work, baby, this journey of deep, meaningful connection will present its own set of challenges. So I hope this episode has been insightful and helpful for you, and that you are encouraged to keep going. Okay. I know life is hard right now, and there might be some people in your life that hold titles, right, that might not be coming through in the way that you hope. But I want you to be encouraged to continue to pursue deep, meaningful connection, because it does happen by design. It's not going to just happen on accident. All right. If you like this episode, if you like this podcast, if you enjoy this content, would you share it with somebody? Would you tell somebody about what we got going on in this little corner of the internet? We would love to invite them to be a part of this space, and we're so thankful that you are here with us. My name is Kristen KB Newton, and it is a pleasure having this conversation with you. Remember, connection doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. Peace, y'all.